How the supply chain adapted to 2020. COVID here to stay. Once people began to realize that COVID 19 was here to stay, corporations and governments rapidly began to adapt their supply chains. As 2020 progressed, many companies began to adapt to the worldwide changes in the supply chain, such as lowering their dependence on international suppliers, such as China and other Asian countries. This world, the world is dependent on China for manufacturing. Willie Shee. Deliveries. Along with their lower dependence on international supply chains, many supermarkets have also started to invest in delivery services, such as Buy Me, which is a same day delivery service for perishable goods such as fruits and vegetables. An example of companies in Ireland that have invested in this company are Tesco and Lidl, which deliver to the Greater Dublin area, including Kildare and Wicklow, within the hour for a higher fee. Non perishables. Companies that don't only supply perishable goods have also started to change and adapt to the supply chain changes by beginning to sell non perishable goods online. Dunn's also supplies goods such as fashion, furniture, household goods, along with electronics. Online, due to the supply chain changes, companies such as Dunn's and other retailers have been forced to be less reliant on their brick and mortar storefronts and more reliant on their online distributors. The reason I've chosen Dunn's as an example for this is due to the fact I worked in their distribution centre over the summer, and the changes that I saw that were implemented due to COVID, where there was a massive influx in products passing through the warehouse. Recently, Dunnes has also bought a second warehouse to help accommodate the amount of goods passing through the warehouse to consumers due to online purchases. The shifts there also changed from being 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, to being 12 hours a day, 4 days a week, but the warehouse is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doesn't stop. The realization, after certain companies and governments began to realize that due to COVID, that commercial airplanes were no longer in use due to the pandemic, the amount of materials and products being shipped overseas were dropping as well. Aviation adaptation. In order for these companies to strengthen the supply chain, airplane manufacturers such as Boeing slowed the production of normal commercial airplanes used for tourism and business, and then began making their transport airplanes in greater quantities to strengthen the supply chain and minimize their losses. This could prove to be exceptionally useful for the distribution of the COVID 19 vaccine that was recently given the green light to be distributed and produced. The lasting effects of supply chain adaptations. Delays. The lasting effects of 2020 on the supply chain is currently a large shift towards contactless delivery methods, which are currently in use by companies such as Amazon, UPS, and many other online based companies. Current circumstances may cause delays in transit. UPS 2020. A major lasting effect on the supply chain is massive delays for online stores due to a large influx of products passing through delivery services which were much more used to delivering much lower quantities of products than they are currently experiencing. However, companies like Amazon would later expand their distribution centers to cope with increased demand, which would create more jobs, which is another reason why I mentioned Dunn's earlier, because they are currently doing that in Ireland. 2020 and its permanent change on the supply chain. The year began with many political and trade disputes disrupting the global supply chain, and both the USA/China trade conflict as well as Brexit are likely to affect later years. Calls for removing global dependence on China escalated this year, and with the advent of COVID, those talks became a reality, starting with Japan pulling its corporations out of China. Due to COVID, there was a massive shift from in person shopping to online shopping and direct to house delivery. Another permanent change on the supply chain is a higher reliance on robotics for the distribution of goods. The efficiencies we gain from our associates and robotics working together harmoniously. Thai Brandy. The knock on effects of the supply chain made by the induction of the coronavirus into society was catastrophic, and the effects will be felt for many years to come. The effects that 2020 will have on our supply chains will be both long lasting and all encompassing, from small restaurants now moving to direct deliveries and the mass automation of large shipping companies. The changes will last for years to come. These are just some of the impacts that 2020 has had on the supply chain. Thank you for listening. References. These are our reference pages. Thank you for listening.